Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition or episode of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 77. I've got to be honest, I get a bit kind of freaked out when I hear the number 77. In a positive way, I get freaked out because it was my grandparents' house number. They've both passed away now, but for 25 years they lived at number 77 before they died. So I always think of them in a positive way when I hear the number 77. I cannot believe it. I say this every time. I cannot believe we made it to episode 77. We are climbing up towards that all-important 100 or 108 number. Thank you to everyone who tunes in on a regular basis now to watch the Hare Krishna Project podcast. We have a large global following all over the world, our viewers and listeners. And I'm grateful to the guests that join us every week who want to share their story. Don't forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, we don't have to. I'd like you to hit the all-important subscribe button so you get updated about future podcasts. And also, if you're watching this on Facebook, please do like and follow the Hare Krishna Project page. Okay, I'm delighted to welcome our guest this week, His Grace Atavi Krsna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Narada Prabhu, but I'm not any grace. His grace is His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, please die.
You're just a humble servant, like the rest of us try to be. Well, it's great to have you with us, Atavi Krsna Prabhu, as our 77th guest. We're gonna have a fantastic conversation today. I can kind of feel it. Let's start by you telling us a bit about you and where you're from.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, first of all, the number of the episode, I was looking forward to be the number 76. But you already did one today. But I was gonna say that I was born on October 13, 1976. That's why I wanted to be the number 76.
I'm so sorry.
But it's okay, because even 76 and 77 are important years. 1976, October 13, 1976, Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture in Hindi in Chandigarh, India. So I was very happy to discover that, that our pure devotee gave a lecture the day that I was born. So indirectly, it was like a real benediction. And the year after, 1977, he went back to the spiritual world. And so these are important numbers. So I was born in Mexico, in Guadalajara, which is one of the largest cities in the country. There are three large cities: Mexico City, the capital, Monterrey, Guadalajara. And Srila Prabhupada once said that the further west you go, the more sinful they are. So I was embarrassed when I heard that, because I was like, oh, I've been discovered.
Is that true? I mean, I didn't know that Prabhupada said that, but is that true? I don't know.
Well, I heard it once, and I felt embarrassed. I was like, oh, I've been discovered. But anyway, Krishna knows everything. Krishna knows past, present, and future. I come from my parents are from kind of like middle low progressive into middle high class. And interesting about my father is that his father, my grandfather, was very religious. My grandfather was a very religious man, and my father, when he was young, he was also going to pursue a religious career. He used to do service for the local church, and he was very much into religion. But then he moved away from religion. He had bad experiences with the church, with the priests, and things like that, and he moved away from religion. He became an atheist. And my mother had a similar story. That's why they both got together, because they both were rebellious against what they were taught from their parents and the religion that they got. But the funny thing is that my father said, I always remember when I was a child, my father used to say, because my uncles asked him, why don't you give religion to your children? Like they were questioned, because we come from a Catholic background, and Mexico is a very Catholic country. So my uncles and aunts used to ask my parents, why don't you give religion to your children? And my father's reply was I don't want to teach them any religion, because I want them to choose whichever religion they want when they grow older. So they were like very open about it, But the funny thing is that when I chose to become a Hare Krishna, then they freaked out,
Yeah, I imagine they didn't have Hare Krishna on their wavelength in terms of the religions that you could join. But yeah, and just so Mexico traditionally is a Catholic country, is it?
Yeah, mainly Catholic, mainly
Yeah,
Catholic. The rest are just minorities, The other, I mean, you rarely see a Muslim.
yeah.
Hindus now, a lot of Indian people have moved to Mexico now because of the
Mm.
companies, but you don't see the other ones are just minorities. Even like the other Christian denominations like Jehovah's Witnesses and like they're just minorities. Mainly it's a Catholic country. And the funny thing I wanted to tell you also about my mom, because she passed away on February 16th this year, and I've been remembering a lot about her.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And it's well, fortunately we did a Shraddha ceremony for her passing, and I felt very, very happy that I could help her in that way. But the funny thing is that before, even though, like I said, my mother, she was a little bit religious, but like I said, she was more rebellious against religion. But because, like I said, we live in a Catholic country, the expressions are related to God or to religion. Like one, and there are equivalents, like for example, in English, I think you said like, for God's sake, right? There's an expression you said, for God's sake. So in Spanish, there's the equivalent would be por amor de Dios or por el amor de Dios, which means for the love of God. So she used to say that expression a lot, And so whenever she wanted me to do something, like she really was like encouraging me to do something, she used that expression, por amor de Dios, for the love of God, for the love of God. So unconsciously it was kind of like sinking in. But then like we only used to go to church like on New Year's Eve or Christmas, just special occasions, but I never did a first communion or anything like that. I just grew up basically like an atheist. But the first time that I came in contact with Krishna, it was when it was in high school. I was in high school. I was actually going to a Catholic high school, to my surprise, to everyone's surprise, but it was Catholic high school. And at that time, I was a teenager. I started to let my hair grow, and I got into rock music and stuff. And there was one I used to get just like the ends of my hair. I used to get them clipped just every once in a while, just for maintenance, But although I had a long mane, and I used to go to this shopping center where there was hairdressers, and I used to go once a month, every time I needed a little haircut. And I made friendship with the girl who was the hairdresser. She used to cut my hair. She did a nice job. So every time I went back to her, so I made friendship with her because we used to talk about music. And like I said before, this is one of the topics that I wanted to tell you about music. Music has always been present in my life because my mother used to love music. And when I was a baby, since childhood, I remember my mother used to listen to the Beatles. She had a whole collection of Beatles records, and she used to love the Beatles and play the Beatles records. So I grew up listening to the Beatles, and that's also one thing I wanted to tell, that somehow or other, it's very mystical. By Krishna's mercy, I was somehow or other connected with the culture of Britain and the UK. Even from childhood, I forgot to mention this. When I was a baby, I got a gift from my grandparents. It was like a TV set, very like a toy TV set, one of those that have a roll inside. And when you press the on button, it just goes around with a little music. I don't know if you remember those. Maybe people don't remember them anymore because they don't exist. Now kids just play with cell phones. But that was like a little toy. It was a TV that had a roll in it. And when you press on, it had this songs, London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. And then the next song was, row, row, row your boat merrily down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. It's so
Yeah,
funny.
I have one of those. All the memories are coming back. I had one of those as a kid as well. Yeah. I can remember it now.
So it's so funny because it was the London Bridge, and then the sentence "Life is but a dream." No, when you think about it, it's amazing. Anyway, going back to this girl that I had friendship with, the hairdresser, we became friends because we used to talk about music, and she gifted me a pack of incense. It was a Hare Krishna pack of incense,
Wow.
and it had the picture of Lord Krishna in the front. Obviously, Lord Krishna, you know how beautiful he is, you know, like bluish color with his peacock feather, garland, playing his flute, bending on three part of his body. And on the back, it was like paradise, you know, like the Garden of Eden, you know, like a waterfall and peacocks and the cow. And it's such a beautiful picture on the front of the incense package. And on the back, it had the Maha-Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So that was the first time that I was in touch with Lord Krishna in the form of a pack of incense.
So how old were you at the time when this happened?
Probably about 16, 17, like that. I was in high school.
And so was your hairdresser, was she a Hare Krishna devotee?
No, the funny thing is that she wasn't a devotee. She actually, another gift that I got from her was a rune. You know what I mean? One of those wooden, you know, runes. Is that how you said it in English? Runes?
I'm not sure. It's a wooden,
It's
like a
like
necklace?
exactly. It's like a necklace, and it has an imprint in it. It's supposed to be like a talisman or something. It's connected with like some ancient traditions. They're not popular anymore, but it was just a string on a string, and I kept it on a necklace. In Spanish, they're called runas, runa, but I don't know the name in English. I thought it was something like rune or something. Anyway, it was kind of like a talisman or something, you know. But yeah, we never spoke about spiritual things with her. It was all about music, but she gifted me this pack of incense.
I love that, how Krishna uses different opportunities and different people to kind of spread Krishna consciousness or share Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, we know that like the spiritual sky incense, it was a very thriving business back at the time, you know, somehow or other. Also, like here in Mexico, also the devotees had done a lot of incense distribution. Yeah, because the Hare Krishna movement has been in Mexico for a long time. In fact, Guadalajara has had Ratha Yatra since 1976 or 77.
And Prabhupada went to Mexico, didn't he?
Yes, Prabhupada was in
Yes,
Mexico City. He was in
yeah.
1973. And he came back again, I think, 1975. He was twice in the temple in Mexico City. He didn't come to Ratha Yatra though, but he gave his blessings, because before he passed away, Prabhupada, he was given a letter telling him about the Ratha Yatra. The devotees wanted to start a Ratha Yatra in 1976. And Prabhupada gave his blessings, you know, for the Ratha Yatra, for the local Ratha Yatra. That's why it's been going on non-stop ever since. And anyway, coming back to the story of my life, after I finished high school, I traveled to Canada, then I came back, started university. Just to make a long story short, I did an exchange program in the university, and I went to the United States. And that began kind of like my spiritual awakening, my spiritual search. And when I came back to Mexico, I started like searching more actively into spiritual things. And I joined an indigenous dance group. You might find it funny because these traditions are dying, you know, unfortunately, because of the advance of Kali Yuga. Here in Mexico, there's still people who dance, and it's very religious, you know. People sometimes even do kind of like a pilgrimage to churches for dancing, and they have like a lot of different groups. But this was just a small group of dancers, and they gave us some indigenous philosophy classes. It was a kind of like meditation movement, kind of like Tai Chi. It was kind of like, like a discipline. It was very disciplined practice. And at the same time, there was a classmate who invited me to the meditation center, which was a Siddha Yoga meditation center. And I became very attached to both practices. On one side, doing the indigenous dance every morning, and on the other side, going to the meditation center on twice a week on evenings. And kind of like I was also interested in organic agriculture and environmental issues. So my life was heading in that direction. And one experience that I also find interesting is that, and I wanted to tell you about this as well. I used to like electronic music. My musical tastes changed as I grew up. You know, when I was a teenager, I was into rap. Then when I was in high school, I was into rock music. Then later on, I became interested in electronic and rave music. So when I was attending this electronic and rave parties, there was an organization, local organization called Mandala. And somehow, I don't know if the devotees, they had some contact with the local devotees for some reason, because every time they had, I mean, just the name Mandala, that was the name of the organization who did the rave parties. And every time they had a party, usually it was in the forest or in like grounds away from the city. They had these images of the yogis in meditation with the chakras, and the whole concept was about meditation and yoga and these kind of things. It was funny. And once I visited because they had a little shop. They had a little shop near a busy street called Chapultepec, and they had a little shop. So once I visited the shop, and they had like a little library of spiritual books. I was surprised as well. They had books by Neil Donald Walsh and autobiography of a yogi. And I didn't buy any book or anything, you know, but I was just looking through, and I remember that, you know, it struck me that this. So I don't know if this organization had some contact with devotees, or maybe some people who were devotees became part of that organization. I don't know. The thing is, like, I used to attend their parties, and I remember seeing these images of the yogis and the you know, the sitting posture with the chakras and things like that. So once I was as part of this indigenous dance group, we were invited to a rave party, because we were going to be like the opening ceremony for the rave party. And then they used to do flyers. They used to print flyers. I don't know about the rave culture in the UK, but here in Mexico, it became kind of like, for some time, it was like undercover, because sometimes it were prohibited. And like, but then they've printed like flyers to advertise this festival. So once I went to one of these festivals, the indigenous group was supposed to go there as the opening act before the rave party started. But I didn't know that the Hare Krishna devotees were going to have their act as well. So I joined with my team of indigenous dancers, and the first thing we did, and we all got into a van or a car or something, and we went to the local Hare Krishna temple, which is called New Nilachala Mandir, that's here in Guadalajara. And we went there, and I didn't know that we were going there before the rave party, but we just went there. And I remember like seeing all these devotees walking around dressed in Indian clothes, the girls dressed with saris and the boys with dhotis, and I didn't know what to think about. I thought they were like Indian clothes. It looked like a temple kind of thing, you know. And I went inside. The temple room. I remember seeing Srila Prabhupada's picture, and he looked very stern, very serious. You know, I was a bit afraid. And I remember like opening. I actually peeked into the temple room, and I saw in the altar, and there were some deities there. You know, I didn't know what they were. I thought they were like dolls or something, you know, with clothes. And like, and I remember looking at the sign saying, you have to take off your shoes, don't do this, don't do that. So I was a bit put off by the experience. I was a bit afraid. Just by looking at Prabhupada's picture, I was a little bit afraid. And then after that, we all got into our vehicles and we went to the rave party. And so it was already at night, maybe like 9 p.m. or something. So our indigenous dance group did our act, and we danced, you know, and stuff. And then the devotees had a kirtan. They did Harinam. They did a kirtan, and I was just I was just carried away by their enthusiasm, and I started dancing with them. You know, I had my indigenous dance attire, and I started dancing with them in the kirtan. And they were like Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana. But I just got carried away by their enthusiasm. I didn't know they were chanting or anything. And once they finished their kirtan, then I just sat down, and I just remember I became like really calm. And then they were distributing prasad, and they gave me a little piece of, they were little cups of plastic cups with halava. So they gave me a little cup of halava, and I remember I ate it, and I felt like I was kind of like really satisfied inside. But then I forgot the whole experience. Later on, I realized that I had met devotees, but at the time I didn't make sense of any of it.
Wow. So you were around 20 years old at the time, maybe 19, 20.
Yeah, something like, no, older than that, because I was in university by then. It was around
Mm.
1999, 2000, around that time.
Okay. Okay. Um, okay. So in terms of spiritually then, what happened for you after that? When did you next meet the devotees? When did you discover the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and that kind of thing?
Yeah, the next thing was when I finished university, after I've done my thesis and everything, I wanted to study abroad. And
Mm.
because I was getting these magazines called The Ecologist by a friend, from a friend, I found the Center for Human Ecology in Edinburgh, Scotland. So I wanted to go to Scotland to study this master's degree in human ecology. And but also my real intention and my real desire was that I wanted to find a Siddha Yoga meditation center in Scotland, because I was very, very into the Siddha Yoga meditation practices. So I wanted to find, I was hoping to find a Siddha Yoga meditation center in Scotland. And when I arrived there, and while I was studying the course in human ecology, I was living with an Indian family, host family, and they invited me to the Diwali festival in the local Hindu mandir in Edinburgh. And I saw the Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for the first time. But because I had read about Bhagavad Gita in the Siddha Yoga meditation book, so I knew that it was a very important book. So when I finally saw it, I thought, wow, this is amazing. I would like to get a hold of this book. And then the week after, well, in my search, I arrived to the Peace and Justice Center, where they had a Namahata in Edinburgh City Center. And I met Javadvasi Prabhu, which is the first devotee that I met, and he became like my Vatma Pradakshaka Guru. And he introduced me to the path of Krishna consciousness. I kept attending the Edinburgh Namahata every Wednesday. I was really happy. The first night I left the Namahata, and he gave me a huge garland, that I was wearing, walking back to the house. It was a huge garland, beautiful, huge garland, almost down to my thighs. And yeah, little by little, I started to discover Krishna consciousness, on this Namahata, and asking questions. There were different devotees giving lectures, like Mother Shamagori, I think, I don't know, I remember maybe Priyakun Prabhu, some other devotees, but it was mainly Javadvasi Prabhu who was giving lectures every Wednesday, and I was asking questions to him. And then, like, the most amazing thing was at the end, that was the year 2002, when I was there in Scotland, year 2002. And by the end of that year, I wanted to take a break from Scotland. I wanted to go to London. So I went to London to spend the Christmas week, and I went to Paris, France, to spend the New Year's week.
Mm.
So that was really amazing. When I arrived to London, I stayed at a friend's house, and then I visited the Radha Krishna temple in Soho Street, and that was amazing. That week, I was actually, Krishna consciousness was so attractive to me that I didn't do any sightseeing or tourist activities at all. I was just going to the Radha Krishna temple every single day and spending the whole day there. For a lot of people, I mean, it would be like a waste of time, because London is one of the most attractive cities in the world. But for me, Krishna consciousness was even more attractive. And I was going there every day. And it was really ecstatic. We did Harinam in Oxford Street to do devotees. I was dancing in ecstasy. It was an ecstasy that it was far greater than the ecstasy that I had felt doing the indigenous dance. It was like a super blissful kirtan, and it was really, really nice. And I also met Jayadev Prabhu. It was really funny because I told him, it was kind of like a secret, Prabhu, I've been in Siddha Yoga. And he just shouts, in the middle of the temple, hey, he's been to Siddha Yoga, give him a japa. So one devotee gives me a japa, and he said, okay, chant Hare Krishna. So he gave me my first japa. I remember I sat down with a Mataji, and she read the Shikshastaka prayers. She read me the Shikshastaka prayers, and I was amazed. You know, she told me about Lord Chaitanya. She says, Lord Chaitanya, he doesn't take any offense. He's the most merciful incarnation of the Lord. I was very attracted, you know. I was always looking for that unconditional love. I guess that was like a very big need in my life, to find that unconditional love. And that was like a big vacuum in my life, because I had never learned about God, you know. And once I learned about Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, I was very touched. I was very moved, and I really got into it.
I think it's amazing kind of story that you're sharing in terms of traveling from Mexico to Scotland, and then down to you know, to London, and then over to kind of France as well. Yeah,
in France it was nice. Also in France, I remember meeting one Prabhupada disciple. He gave me a tape of George Harrison songs, and he gave me the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in French, and he signed it, and he also included a little picture of him with Prabhupada when he was young on Harinam.
Wow.
It was very nice. It was very nice in Paris as well. I stayed most of the time, stayed in the temple, washing pots. I remember I became very attracted. One pujari used to play the Damodarastaka prayers by Agnidev. Even though the funny thing, later I found out it was not even Kartik month. It was in the month of December. It was last week of the year. But every day he used to play the Damodarastaka prayers by Agnidev, because it's a very beautiful song, and I just became so attached to that song. You know, I didn't know what they were singing, but I loved the song. Later I found out. And then the next year, like January 2003, I came back to Scotland to continue my course in Human Ecology, and kept attending the Namahata until eventually I had the opportunity to go to Karuna Bhavan in Nityananda Trajodasi. So Karuna Bhavan is a very special temple, you know. I was super attracted. I was super happy to be in that festival in Nityananda Trajodasi in Karuna Bhavan. Karuna Bhavan, my experience was so magical. I don't know what kind of experience you had, or when did you first go, but the first time I was there, it was like magical. It was really magical.
Yeah, I first went to Karuna Bhavan in 2016, and it's certainly one of my more favorite temples in terms of the, you know, the landscape, the beauty, the location. I've always been a fan of Karuna Bhavan. I was going to say Les Mahego, not particularly Les Mahego, but a fan of Karuna Bhavan, you know, in terms of the way that the temple is set up, and you know, the devotees that live around the temple are wonderful devotees, like Javat Vasi, who you've mentioned already. I was only chatting with Javat Vasi on the phone just about 2 weeks ago. Great devotee.
Yeah, what I liked about Karuna Bhavan, it was a very nice spiritual community. My desire was always to live in a farm community, to live close to nature. I was very attracted to nature, and I saw my dream fulfilled. That's why I kept attending little by little, and eventually I dropped the Human Ecology course and just moved into the temple.
Wow! So you actually quit university to move into the Hare Krishna temple?
Yes, I did. I did that. The course was fantastic. I wanted to tell you a little bit about it, because I had very nice teachers. I remember there was one important person. I guess the most important personality there was Alistair McIntosh. I don't know if you know him.
I've heard the name Alistair McIntosh, but I'm not sure if it's the Alistair McIntosh that you're talking about.
Well, he's the Scottish Alistair McIntosh, and he's written books on ecology and sociology. He's a very interesting author. I was very attracted to him. I really liked him. And there were other nice teachers, Nick Wilding and his wife Veren from France. But what happened is that because I was discovering Krishna consciousness at the same time that I was doing this Human Ecology course, I was just overwhelmed by the experience, and all the papers and all the all the essays that I had to write for the classes, I was just writing about Krishna consciousness. I was writing about my experience because it was so overwhelming. And at the end, even Alistair McIntosh had a course called Spiritual Activism. And maybe I should have finished the course, because then I could have learned a lot about from his course and how to apply it in Krishna consciousness. I just didn't, because, and the reason why is because I was already doing spiritual activism when I was in London, because it was it was a marathon. One of the days that I was in London, there was an Istagosti. Maybe it might have been Mahadyuti Swami. I'm not sure who he was, but he was like a Prabhupada disciple. And there were all the temple devotees there at the temple room. It was a different atmosphere. It was like very quiet, and everyone was very attentive to the lecture. And they were talking about the book distribution. And this devotee might have been Mahadyuti Swami. He was saying that he had done different services, but he was never satisfied unless he was distributing Prabhupada's books. So when I heard that, I became convinced that's what I have to do. That's what I have to do. And when I went back to Scotland, I just got books from the Sankirtan devotees in the street. I remember even once in Edinburgh, one Mataji, she was struggling hard to distribute books in Edinburgh, because Scotland could be a rough place. And she had not sold any books. So I just went up to her in the Royal Mile in Princess Street. And I said, Mataji, please, I need books. I need books. So I bought like 20 books of her just so that I could sell, because I had run out of books. And she was so happy, she was, oh, thank you, Prabhu, you've made my day. But please, next time you need books, just buy from the temple. And I was, okay, Mataji, thank you so much. So I had books, and I was walking all over Edinburgh, just distributing books. And I was very happy, I thought, I knew that was the way, that was the way. I had learned that was the way. Back then I understood I had to distribute books. And where was I before? Well, then, yeah, Karuna Bhavan experience was also fantastic, because there was the guru. I'll tell you how I experienced this back then. He used to be called Bhakti Vallabha Goswami. I was completely fascinated by his personality. There was something about him. He was so charismatic. He used to make me laugh to tears. He used to crack jokes that made me laugh to tears. He completely captured me. Another thing, he also used to kind of like read my mind. I had a lot of mystical experience. I can tell you a lot of mystical experience that I had during this period, And this is something like very, very intimate and very, very mystical, These are the kind of things that normally you don't tell people, because they're very intimate experiences. But he definitely, I don't know if he read my mind, or if it was Paramatma, but sometimes every time I went to Karuna Bhavan and he gave a lecture, he used to answer all my questions, and he used to deal with all my mental issues and mental platforms. He used to deal with them all, even without me saying anything, because how could he know me? It was just something that's inconceivable, these kind of things,
Yeah. So just to confirm, you moved into Karuna Bhavan in which year?
In the very same year, 2003, in the summer of 2003. Yeah, I became very attached to the devotees, because it was like a community. Everyone was into book distribution as well. Everyone was pushing book distribution, so I became very attracted to that. And when I spoke with the temple president, Prabhupada Vani Prabhu, he encouraged me. He said, I said, actually, one of the reasons why I joined the temple is because before I was still living with the Indian family. But there was one member from the Namahata, his name is Madhusevita Prabhu. I asked him if I could move to his house, because he was a devotee. I somehow or other, I wanted to start making my way closer to Krishna and closer to the devotees, closer to the temple. So I moved into this devotee's house. He was called Mark back then, but he allowed me to stay in his house. And he was very friendly, he was very kind, but he had to go and look after his old grandparents, he just left me there. And once I went to the grocery shop and to buy some boga, and I went back home with this big cauliflower, and I was in the kitchen with this cauliflower, and I started chopping the cauliflower, and then I just realized, wait a minute, I don't know how to cook. I've never learned how to cook, so what am I going to do? And I was just eating like muesli with milk and dried fruit and stuff. And I was offering that to Krishna, you know? But then I realized, no way, I need to move to the temple where there's the most delicious prasadam I've ever tasted. You know, I can't cook. How am I going to maintain myself? And then on the topic of music, I also wanted to tell you, this devotee, Mark Madhusevita, he took me once to Moira's house. Do you know Moira from Scotland? From Edinburgh?
Yes. I think she has a different name now.
Yes.
Uh,
What's her name?
I can't remember. I haven't seen Moira for about 5 or 6 years. I believe she was initiated much later on by Janananda Goswami. But she told me her other name was Moira. I met her about 6 years ago at Rath Yatra.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't remember her initiated name, but yeah, we went to Moira's house and she was really friendly. She was a very nice lady. And she gave me a tape with the music from Indradumna Swami. It was the Pada Kamala record on tape. And I went when I went back into Madhusevita's apartment, his flat, and I listened to the tape, I was completely captivated by the music. And I was a real fan of music. I had a big collection of CDs, you name it. I think I had, I mean, I consider that I had really good musical tastes, and I was really into CDs and music, modern music, different styles of music. But just to listen to this tape by Indradumna Swami, and I don't know who he was. I thought he was just like a piano man with his, you know, singing to Krishna. Have you heard that record, Pada Kamala by Indradumna Swami?
No, I haven't. No.
Well, it's very mellow. It's just like piano and synthesizers, and he's chanting different Vaishnav songs, but with a different style. It's not the kirtan style at all. It's just like piano and synthesizer, and it's very mellow, very relaxed music. So when and also it gives the translation in English for some of the songs talking about Krishna, and also it's got the Guru Vastaka prayers. And so it's such a beautiful, such a beautiful music. When I heard this tape, and by then tapes were not very popular, you know, like people were choosing more like to have CDs rather than tapes. But even then I thought this tape is more valuable than my whole CD collection. My whole CD collection is just rubbish. It has no value whatsoever. This tape is really, really amazing. So like little by little, like that's one of the things that attracted me about the Hare Krishna movement also, that there were different kinds of music. And like I said, in this period also, I started, before I joined the temple, I started meeting the devotees on the street in Edinburgh. And I remember I met Priya Kund Prabhu on just on the way to the castle on the Royal Mile. And like he was the first one who asked me to say Gauranga. He said, "Can you say Gauranga?" And I was like, "What?" Because I had heard many mantras from the Siddha Yoga meditation center, but I've never heard Gauranga. And I was like, what does that mean? It means be happy. Okay, Gauranga. So like, you know, the Scottish devotees back then, they had a whole Gauranga campaign, and not only they sold the Prabhupada's books on the street, but they also sold the Gauranga Power Band CDs. So I started buying the Gauranga Power Band CDs, and I started listening to their music. A few of them, like Be Free Boogie, and they had like a whole collection of CDs. I loved Mosher 6 because it had the first track, 45 minutes with the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra, like really heavy. And also some of the songs, they include some philosophy, and obviously is Bhakti Vallabha Puri Goswami was the lead singer of the band, and he was also giving a little bit of preaching in some of the songs with the lyrics and stuff. So by reading Prabhupada's books, by meeting the devotees, by listening to the Gauranga Power Band CDs, I became attracted. And also, since I've always been a fan of music, you know, especially, you know, when you're a fan of music, when you get the chance to meet the artists behind the record, you're like super excited, right? You want to get their autograph and stuff, you know? So for me also to meet the monks who had produced the records, it was like something very, very attractive. And the funny thing is that like I developed a strong relationship with the Bhakti Vallabha Puri Goswami. You know, we had a particular rasa, you know. I had watched the movie Train Spotting before, like when I was in Mexico, I had watched Train Spotting many, many times, and I became it was like, I think it was my favorite movie along with Clockwork Orange. They were my favorite movies. So I had watched Train Spotting many times. It was really funny because I didn't know that I was going to end up in Scotland, but somehow or other, like, Krishna was preparing me for me to understand the Scottish accent and the Scottish culture through the picture. So when I joined Karuna Bhavan, as I started to develop this relationship with Bhakti Vallabha Puri Goswami, he learned that I was called, I had a nickname. It was Alo, because my civil name is Alvaro. So my little brother used to call me Alo for short. So when I joined the temple, I was Bhakta Alo. But because in Hindi, Alu means potato. So then Maharaj used to call me Spud. So I found that very funny, because also one of the characters in Trainspotting, his name is Spud. So it was really funny how he kind of like used to make fun of me in a nice way. I thought it was very, very funny, that we developed this rasa, this relationship, and it was always done through the devotees. So that's one of the things I learned as well. He was very heavy at times as well. He used to chastise devotees. I remember, he was very heavy at times, but he never chastised me. All the memories I have from him are very encouraging and very nice. He was the one who made me a devotee. Javadvasi Prabhu was my Varma Pradakshaka Guru, but Bhaktivallabha Puri Goswami was the one who actually, he managed to kind of like to defeat my false ego and all my attempts to avoid Krishna consciousness. And he actually like made me into a devotee. He actually like convinced me that Krishna consciousness was the topmost thing in life, and that my duty was to serve Krishna, that my duty was to serve the devotees. And he always stressed that, you can't go directly to Krishna. You have to serve a devotee, and not just a pure devotee, but all devotees. You have to serve the devotees. So I try to develop that mood, of serving the devotees and try to have respect and appreciation for their association, because ultimately is the most valuable thing we have. Devotional service and Vaishnava association is the most valuable thing we have, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear you talk positively about Bhakti. I'm only aware of his non-sannyas name, really, Balabhadra. I mean, I'm aware that I know he was also a sannyasi within ISKCON and then left ISKCON and then was given was re-sannyased by someone else, and I think had a different name. So I'm not aware of what his name was, or I can't remember his name was that you've just mentioned when he was a sannyasi in ISKCON, but Balabhadra. Devotees these days refer to him as Balabhadra, which was his re-sannyas name. And I've talked to a lot of devotees about Balabhadra, and
sorry, no, I think actually his first initiation name is Balabhadra, right? When he got reinitiated, he got a different name, like Kusumi, Swami, something like that. But yeah, his name means Bhakti Vallabh. It was like strength, Bhakti Vallabh from strength. Puri Goswami, that was the name he was given. Yeah, I mean, you might think that I was very naive, because obviously I'm not disregarding the fact that there were problems behind the scene. I was just not aware of what was happening. Devotees were very protective in that sense. They never told me anything that was going on behind the scenes. So that's why my experience was always positive in Karuna Bhavan. I mean, there were a few frictions with one or two devotees, but because I had a very strong affection and attachment for the guru, for the temple president, for all the devotees in general. My outlook was always very positive, and they were always very kind to me. And that's the other thing that I wanted to tell you. There was obviously, Scotland is a bit isolated from the rest of the UK. We did have some visits from some other, I mean, I remember even, I'm telling you about the names that these devotees had back then, because another one who visited a couple of times was Bhaktivedanta Purna Swami, who was called at the time, another one who had problems, but back then, we thought he was in good standing. I mean, I was completely unaware of things were going on behind the scenes, like I said. But anyway, the program that was in Scotland, the temple program that we had in Scotland, it was always it was different from the rest of the world in ISKCON world. Like, I wanted to tell you the program we had, like Monday, Tuesday, we had Srimad Bhagavatam class on the morning, for the morning program, temple morning program. Wednesday, we had Krishna book reading, and it was super exciting because we had a quiz. We divided the room into two groups, either boys and girls, like Prabhus and Matajis, or just different mixed group. And then we read a paragraph each. And at the end, there was a quiz, and one devotee was asking questions. So it was like super exciting. It was one of the most exciting experiences. It was to read Krishna's pastimes, Krishna book with the devotees, and have this little quiz. And it was always super interesting. Then on Thursdays, we used to read from Prabhupada's book, just translations from Sri Upanishad, Nectar of Instruction. We used to read Prabhupada Lilamrita, and we used to read Srimad Bhagavatam, like one chapter of the translations. And we also used to read Lord Krishna's qualities, 64 transcendental qualities, and 25 transcendental qualities of Srimati Radharani. And then Friday was Srimad Bhagavatam class again. Saturday, we didn't have Srimad Bhagavatam class. We just left early for Sankirtan. And on Sunday, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But there was always something interesting going on. There were some times where we had Istagostis with Maharaj there at the temple. There were long Istagostis, sometimes like 2 or 3 hours, And sometimes he had us do some crosswords on different topics, like just for fun. We always had like different activities. It was always something going on, something exciting, something new. We used to have to play crosswords, either like from Navadvip Dham topic, like Chaitanya Lila or Vrindavan Lila. He always tried to engage us in different ways, And like, later he left ISKCON and so many problems came, but I was protected, the devotees protected me, and they told me, just take shelter of Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada is his books and his instructions are eternal, and that Vani is an eternal link. So they encouraged me to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada, while all these things were going on in the back.
So Balabhadra left ISKCON, I think, 2005. Was it 2006?
Yeah, a little bit later than that. Yeah, around that time, maybe because I was in Mexico 2005, and then I came back to Scotland in 2006. Yeah, maybe back when I came back. But because I'm not really. Yeah, it happened around that time, 2006. 2007, maybe around that time, but everything was on the background, I wasn't aware of what was going on. Little by little, I was finding out what was going on.
And so you then you went to Mexico 2005, went back to Mexico.
Yeah, just
returned
to get a
Scotland.
Visa. Exactly.
Yeah, returned to Scotland. How long did you continue to stay at Karuna Bhavan after that time?
Yeah, well, one of the desires, one of my secret desires that I had is that I wanted to go to India. And it's funny because that week that I told you about in December 2002, when I was in London, I was in front of Sri Sri Radha Londoneshwar, and I remember I gave some dakshin. I put some Lakshmi in the hundi box, and I had a desire. I asked the deities, please, I would like to go to India. But because I had moved to Karuna Bhavan, I had changed that desire just into serving Krishna and distribute books and serve the mission. But I remember in the classes, I remember Mother Shamagori used to say to cultivate a desire to go to India, cultivate a desire to live in Vrindavan. So that desire was there in the back of my mind all the time, So finally, it was when Prabhupada Vani left as well. Prabhupada Vani was the temple president. He left as well sometime later after Balabhadra. And Prabhupada Prana Prabhu became the temple president, and he took me to Vrindavan. And I'm going to be eternally grateful to Prabhupada Prana Prabhu for taking me to Vrindavan. It was just him and me. And we were there in the Holy Land of Vrindavan in the year 2008, Kartik 2008. And it was fantastic experience. It was really, really nice. In fact, because it was a combination of different things as well, it was super exciting. We went to pilgrimage places. We went to Govardhan. We did Govardhan Parikram twice. In fact, we went to Vrindakund with Dinabandhu Prabhu. I remember hearing lectures by Kadamba Kanana Swami. We did the pilgrimage also with Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. We met with Dhananjaya Prabhu. He was kind of like one of the main figures. I don't know if I think he was the temple president of the Krishna Balaram Mandir back then. I'm not sure. But went to see Dhananjaya Prabhu. We also met Keshidamana Prabhu, a real character. He had been to Scotland just before we went to Vrindavan. He is really nice devotee, Keshidamana Prabhu. We went to his house. It was amazing. He wanted to set up a music studio on like a little basement, and we found a snake in his house in Vrindavan. We had so many experiences. Another experience that I had, it was very nice to meet devotees in Vrindavan. I met Atmaram Prabhu, the Spanish devotee who plays the guitar. You know his music, Atmaram? And he was so nice. Oh, he was also like meeting because I had heard his record so much, and also to meet him in person, it was fantastic. I had also heard Shri Prahlad. I had heard his kirtans for the first time in Soho Street Temple, and then I listened to his Village of Peace reggae band, and I was listening to that all the time, and I really loved it. So when I met Shri Prahlad it was just in the Vrindavan Parikram road, and I just met him and I told him, Prabhu, I love your music. I love your Village of Peace. It has inspired me so much. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your music. And he gave me a hug. He hugged me, and it was like, I felt like so happy, that he was appreciative. So that was very nice being in Vrindavan. It was like super nice, But then when I came back to Scotland, and we came back to Scotland with Prabhupada Prana Prabhu and did the winter marathon, it was too cold. I just thought, because the weather in Vrindavan is so nice. It was so nice back then. And it reminded me kind of like in Mexico. In Mexico, we have like very nice. It's like the eternal spring. They said that Guadalajara has the weather of an eternal spring. And so then the austerity of the cold in Scotland was too much. So I thought I wanted to move away. And I went. Before I left Scotland, I remember the devotee who took me to the airport was Yugala Kishore. He's a devotee that you might want to interview as well. I wanted to interview him when I was in Leicester, but I couldn't see him. But he's got a very interesting story. Yugala Kishore Prabhu became a devotee because he was in the entertainment industry, and there's a music group called Simple Minds. You know that band, Simple Minds? It's a band from the 80s. They're called Simple Minds, and they have a very.
And where is this devotee now? Is he still in the UK? Is he in Scotland? Is he?
He was part of the Scottish Yatra, but he was disciple of Bhaktivalabha Puri Goswami, but he took shelter of Jaipataka Swami. Actually, he was the first one. When he found out that Balabhadra had left, he immediately went to Mayapur and took shelter of Jaipataka Swami. And then he moved with his family. He's from Amsterdam. He's from Holland. And his wife is from South Africa, I think. And they moved to Leicester. But like I said, he has got a very interesting story because he was working with the Simple Minds group. They have a song called "Don't You Forget About Me." It's a very popular.
I know the song. I know the song now. Yeah.
So the lead singer from this band gave him a Bhagavad Gita to Yugala Kishore. Yeah.
Wow.
So he's got a very interesting story. And when he was the one, I was associating with him before I left Scotland, and he's the one who took me to the airport. He was the last devotee that I saw in Scotland. And I remember on the car, on the way to the airport, he was talking to me. He was convincing me, like over and over again. He was saying, you have to take shelter of a spiritual master. No matter what you do in life, you have to take shelter of a spiritual master. He was just like digging in, all the way through the airport. So I just left Scotland with that idea in my mind that I just had to find a spiritual master. I went to France. I went in the summer 2009. I went to Paris and stayed there for 2 months for Ratha Yatra. And then after that, because I had arranged with the temple president that after that I was going to go to Los Angeles, New Dwarka, because I had an American visa. And I had been to Los Angeles in 2005 because one devotee, Sanat Kumar Prabhu, Prabhupada disciple, he took me to Los Angeles and we went to Ratha Yatra. It was the first Ratha Yatra that I had been to, and it was fantastic. In fact, another story that I forgot to mention, when I was there in Los Angeles Ratha Yatra, after the parade and everything, I met with one devotee. It was a Mexican devotee who was living there in Los Angeles also. And we just became friends. I started talking to him, and we were walking Venice Beach and just getting to know each other. Very nice. And at the end of our conversation, I gave him a tape with the Guranga Power Band because I had made a tape of the CD with Mosher 6, and I gifted him the tape. And I forgot all about him, I didn't even remember what his name was or anything. I forgot about him. So then that was in 2005. And then in 2009, yeah, 2009, summer 2009, when I arrived to New Dwarka in Los Angeles. When the devotees saw me, they were like, "Oh, he's from Mexico. Oh, how are you? You look like Ananta Vilas. Where is Ananta Vilas? Have you seen him? Please send my regards. We miss him so much." And everyone just saw me, and he was, "Oh, he looks like Ananta Vilas and Ananta Vilas." And I was like, "Who's Ananta Vilas? I don't know him." They were just talking about this devotee that they loved so much. So after being like, I was in Los Angeles for that period of time, 2009, or the second part of the year, until January 2010. That's when I met I heard a lecture from a devotee, because there were so many devotees there in Los Angeles Ratha Yatra doing service, and they were some who came from the Caribbean, from Dominican Republic. And one of them told me about Virabahu Prabhu. I don't know, I think they were listening to a lecture on the kitchen. We were doing service in the kitchen. They were listening to a lecture. And I told him, "Prabhu, who's that giving the lecture?" And he said, "Virabahu Prabhu. Have you not heard him?" No, who's that? "Oh, you've not heard Virabahu Prabhu? No? Well, I'll give you some lectures. I'll get to get some lectures." So one of the ladies there, Chatura Saki, a lady from Venezuela, she gave me a whole collection of MP3s with lectures by Virabahu Prabhu. And I started listening to the lectures. One thing I forgot to tell you, when I was in Scotland, I was very attached to Shivaram Swami. I think I was actually inclined to take initiation from Shivaram Swami. I had met some other gurus like Indradumna Swami and Bhakti Vishram Madhava Swami. He also came to Scotland, as well as other devotees like Harisori Prabhu and Dinabandhu Prabhu had been as well in Scotland. But of the gurus that I had met around the time in Scotland, I was very attracted to Shivaram Swami. In fact, I actually approached him to ask for initiation, but I had already taken the decision to leave Scotland. And he said, "Well, if you're going to Mexico, then I can't be your guru, because we're not going to see each other or anything, you know. So you better take shelter of someone else who's over there." So I was like, "Oh, well." Anyway, so because I had already decided to leave. So when I arrived to Los Angeles, and I started listening to lectures by Srila Virabahu, his preaching and his presentation of Krishna consciousness was practically the same as Shivaram Swami's, just that it was done in Spanish. But he spoke with such authority, with such conviction, that I just and I remember in one of his lectures there, Virabahu Prabhu said that we should seek the shelter of a spiritual master with all strength, even if we have to travel to the end of the world. And it was very funny, because then I found out that actually Srila Virabahu was living there in New Dwarka, in Los Angeles temple. So I had already traveled around the world, but now I was in Los Angeles, where Virabahu Prabhu was living. So then I requested to have like meetings with him. I requested to have like that I wanted to approach him to get to know him. And he asked me, "Well, how do you know?" Because he was surprised, you know. He's like I told you before, the recording, my spiritual master is kind of like very low profile in terms of social media, you know. Although he's a GBC, and he's preached in South America for many years, and he's very well known in South America, especially in countries like Argentina and like Chile and South America in general. And he grew up in Venezuela. That's another whole story about my spiritual master. I could tell you about him if you want. But he was a bit surprised, you know. He was like this boy, he's approaching me and he wants me to be his guru. How do you know about him? He asked me. How do you know about me? He asked me. So I told him when I was in Mexico, we used to distribute the Sri Upanishad, and the Spanish edition of Sri Upanishad. The Sri Upanishad has a little introduction by Viravahu Das. It was in parentheses Marcos Safarani. That's his civil name. So it's a very nice introduction that he wrote for the Spanish edition of Sri Upanishad. And I always used to read that. Sometimes I used to read that little introduction, but I never knew who he was, you know. But then I told him that I had read about him, and that I had given lectures by him, and that I wanted to get initiated by someone there in Los Angeles. I actually was Suavas Prabhu, the temple president, who recommended that I should get initiated by Viravahu Prabhu. And then I told him a little bit about my life, and I told him that I had lived in Scotland, and he was like, Scotland, because in Spanish the word Scotland is Escocia, and he says, oh, I have a disciple in Sweden. The word Sweden is Suecia, so kind of like Escocia and Suecia, they sound kind of like similar. So he thought, I have a disciple in Sweden, and his name is Prabhupada Charan. And I was like, what? Prabhupada Charan in Sweden? And I was like, no. Prabhupada Charan is in Scotland. And like, I was, no. I have a Prabhupada, have a disciple called Prabhupada Charan in Sweden. And I was like, oh, well, okay. Well, I know a Prabhupada Charan in Scotland. And well, then that was the topic. Then later, I find out that he has a disciple, Mexican disciple called Prabhupada Charan, who lives in Sweden. Later, I found out. But then I had to come back to Mexico. I didn't have my visa expired for the US. It was just a tourist visa. My visa expired for the US, so I had to come back to Mexico in 2010. And like in Ratha Yatra that year, 2010, November 2010, that's when I got initiated. He sent the japa and he sent my name and everything through a ceremony that was done after the Ratha Yatra here in Guadalajara. And that's what I got initiated. And I'm very grateful to my spiritual master. You know, he gave me a beautiful name. Actually, I think that's one of the things that kept me going through all these years. You know, I just in case you're wondering, because you've not asked me, but in case you're wondering, Atavi Krishna means Krishna from the forests of Vrindavan.
It's a wonderful name. I've not heard that name before in the kind of devotee community. It's a really, really nice name.
I feel very honored. It's actually part of my Guru Pranam. Kushakrata Prabhu, my guru told me that Kushakrata Prabhu is a scholar, Sanskrit scholar in ISKCON. And Kushakrata Prabhu made the Guru Pranam for my guru. He was the one who made the Guru Pranam for my guru, and the name is there in his Guru Pranam. You know? So I'm very honored to have his name. And my spiritual master has done wonderful service for ISKCON. I don't know if you want me to tell you a little bit about
Well, I was on my phone because I was just trying to get a photo of your guru, but I can't find one. You're absolutely right. He's very low key.
No, but you'll find him. You'll find him on Google, and he's a GBC. You can look on the official GBC website with all the GBC
I mean, I just put
members.
GBC. Okay,
his name is Vira Bahu. It's spelled with V. Vira Bahu means strong arms. Vira Bahu.
I'm gonna have a look now while you're talking.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a look now.
Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about my spiritual master.
Yes, please do. Please do.
He's got a very interesting story. He was born in South America. He was born in Argentina, but he moved to Venezuela. He moved to Caracas, Venezuela. And he's had a very interesting story as well. You know, he always was kind of like a leader since he was in school with his classmates, and he was in religious educational institutions as well, with priests and everything, you know. And he developed an interest for spiritual life. They're very interesting. So I was gonna ask you, can you tell me who's the most popular pop singer in the UK in modern times that you can think of?
I have no idea. The most popular pop singer in the UK. I have absolutely no idea. Okay. I know nothing about pop music.
Okay,
at all.
No problem. The thing is that in Venezuela there is one devotee who became a very popular musician in the country. He's the most popular musician in Venezuela. But back then he was also on a spiritual search. His name was Ilan Chester, and he has a background from Israel. He has a Jewish background. And in one of his holidays visiting his grandparents, he went to Israel. He was in Tel Aviv, and he met devotees in Tel Aviv, Israel, and he got a Bhagavad Gita. So after that, he came back to Venezuela in Caracas, and he got together with his group of friends, and he started preaching to them about Bhagavad Gita. And they started getting together in a regular basis to read Bhagavad Gita, and they used to chant Hare Krishna with their acoustic guitars, and they just had their own sangha. And they used to even practice ekadasis every fortnight. They used to fast until 5 o'clock. I mean, it was a bit kind of like their own way, their own way of doing things, you know, because they had not had any association with Prabhupada disciples. But the funny thing is that when Prabhupada disciples came to South America, to Venezuela, to Caracas, Venezuela, there was already a Sangha of devotees. And it was because this devotee, Ilan Chester, had introduced Krishna consciousness there in Caracas, Venezuela. And then this group of devotees got initiated by Prabhupada. My guru was one of them. And like I said, Ilan Chester then later became Javi Prabhu. And Javi Prabhu is one of the most amazing musicians in ISKCON. Have you heard of Javi? You have not heard of Javi Prabhu? Well, he's a fantastic musician. He's done well. Mainly his career has been in the outside world. But the funny thing is, like a little bit like George Harrison, Javi Prabhu has composed all his songs dedicated to Krishna. But for the general audience, it seems like he's singing just love songs and romantic songs. But actually, the secret of all his music is that he's dedicating his songs to Krishna, just like George Harrison did with Something, the song Something, and then later on he became like more over.
Yeah. Okay. So I've actually just found a photo of your guru on the you probably can't see this.
Yes, I can see.
There we go. Because there he is. So I was just having a quick look while you were talking. So Virabahu is the GBC member for South America and Mexico.
I don't think Mexico. He's visited Mexico. Yeah. But I never met him in Mexico. The funny thing, he used to come to Mexico when there were big Ratha Yatras. In the 80s and 90s, many gurus used to come to Mexico, Ratha Yatra, Guadalajara Ratha Yatra specifically, like Jayapataka Swami, Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Your own Guru Maharaj, Hridayananda Maharaj, has got many disciples here. In fact, many disciples of Hridayananda Maharaj here in Guadalajara.
I think he was the GBC for South America back in the 80s and 90s, I think.
Might be, I don't know.
And I think he was again recently a co-GBC for some time, but I don't think he is now.
Yeah, I don't know. My Guru Maharaj is not GBC for Mexico. He's GBC for some countries of South America and the Caribbean. And in fact, after I got initiated, he requested me to go to Puerto Rico, which is an island in the Caribbean. And like it was a very wonderful experience as well. And it was very interesting to have the experience of living in a similar environment like Karuna Bhavan, because it's also a farm community.
Yeah.
It's also right in the jungle. And I also did book distribution from the temple, you know. It was kind of like the same program, living in nature, living close to nature, and then going to the city to preach and for book distribution.
So can we talk a bit more about today now, if possible, in terms of you know, what are you doing today, not literally doing today, but in terms of projects you're involved with today? So you were initiated in 2010 in Mexico. 13 years have passed by. You're still living in Mexico. You're based in Mexico. I think you've been back in Scotland again recently. But what are you? Do you serve at a temple? Are you involved with projects or not? Or, you know, I know you've got we are growing an active YouTube presence, which is great. I love the fact you've been interviewing devotees, which is wonderful. But what about any kind of projects that you're involved with now?
Yes, Prabhu. Well, I guess one other story that I have is that when at times when I've lived at home, still practicing Krishna consciousness and distributing books, I used to go into the internet always to look for lectures and videos and stuff. And there was a period I was watching the LA Live page. It was after I left Los Angeles. In fact, it was in 2010 when after I left Los Angeles. I was following the temple program of New Dwarka, Los Angeles, and at times on the video screen you would see Prabhupada's memories of Prabhupada's disciples telling the memories of Prabhupada, you know. And so I was very lucky. When I was in Los Angeles. I was lucky to serve Siddhanta Prabhu. Siddhanta Prabhu is the devotee who's behind these video interviews of all his God brothers and God sisters. He's been working on this project for many years. And I was so fortunate. Now, later I realized I was so fortunate that I got to serve him once, because we used to get together for prasadam in the morning, breakfast prasadam. And sometimes he used to come and just sit down in a chair. And while other devotees take prasadam, he used to just read to us, maybe Prabhupada Lilamrita or Krishna book or something. And once I was serving prasadam to the devotees, and I asked him, Prabhu, would you like some prasadam? And he says, oh, just give me a little fruit, and not the whole feast, just give me a little fruit or something, and I just made him a plate. And then later I realized, wow, I got an opportunity to serve him directly, and he was the one who's behind all these video interviews. So then when I moved into while I was living in the local ISKCON temple here in New Nilachala Mandir, I was with another devotee from Venezuela as well, Adokshaya. He was South American Adokshaya, and he had the collection of books, Prabhupada Memories. The memories books were this were the transcriptions of this interview, of these videos interviews, So I started I started copying because I couldn't get a hold of the book. They were very rare books, but I started copying all the interviews and posting them on Facebook along with Facebook pictures. And then I got in touch with the author of the books, so the author behind these interviews, which is Siddhanta Prabhu. Through Facebook, I got in touch with him, and I started proposing to translate his books into Spanish. So I think it was while I was in Puerto Rico that I started doing that. And then when I came back to Mexico to enter Grihastha ashram, I got married with a lady, Govinda Valavi, disciple of Bhaktisundar Maharaj, and she's also been very supportive, by her support, I've been able to continue doing Sankirtan and to do these translations. So I continue to do these translations, and I've been in very close contact with Siddhanta Prabhu. He's been kind of checking, what I'm doing, and a lot of feedback, and yeah. And book distribution, I guess, and like you also mentioned, this YouTube channel. It began in Puerto Rico. It began with a god brother called Yadava Hari. He's like a Babaji. I really like this devotee because he's a Babaji. He lives very austere. He's kind of like the Indian Babaji. He lives in a hut in the jungle with no electricity, with no running water. He just has candles and a lot of spiritual books, and he does nothing other than just pray and read spiritual books. And sometimes he goes out to beg some food, but he's a very wonderful preacher. So when I met him, I thought, wow, this devotee, he preaches so nicely. I need to record him. And I started to record him on audio, and I uploaded his talks on VK, which is another social media platform from Russia. But it wasn't very popular, It's not you can't reach too many people. So then I started recording small videos of him, and I started uploading them on YouTube, on the YouTube page. And then when I came back to Mexico, the Scottish Yatra came to Mexico. That was something so amazing, because they had made friendship with there was one Mexican devotee who had been in Glasgow, and I think he had lived in the temple for some time, and they became very good friends with Prabhupada Prana Prabhu. So then he requested the Scottish devotees to come to Mexico to perform his Vivaha wedding ceremony. And that was in north of Mexico, which is very, very far away. But still, Javadvasi Prabhu and Mother Vrinda, they came all the way to the north of Mexico, to Guadalajara, just to visit me and my wife. And I was very touched, the fact that Javadvasi Prabhu came all the way to visit us. I was very, very touched. So I took the opportunity.
That's amazing. That's how long did they stay for?
It was just 2 days, Prabhu. It was just very short trip they made. Mother Vrinda stayed an extra half a day or something, but it was just 2 days that I was with Javadvasi Prabhu. But I recorded his interview. I thought I need to get him, even though the quality is not very good. There was some noise on the background, and I was just learning how to use the camera, but I managed to get his interview. And then I thought, well, there's so many devotees here as well, that I could interview. And the idea it was just an excuse to get their association. I'm always trying to seek devotee association. And I did it in the beginning also to encourage my wife, so that she would also appreciate devotee association. and to have like the time to listen to their stories, how they came to Krishna consciousness. Because for me, the period of the time that I was living in Karuna Bhavan was the most exciting in my life. When was Krishna consciousness was all magical, everything was new, everything was so exciting. Every service you performed, every mantra you chanted, every shloka you learned, every prasadam you tasted, every place you went on Sankirtan, everything was like so new to discover. And it was so magic, so ecstatic. Krishna was manifesting in so many ways. And so for me, it's very important to remember that period, you know, when I was so enthusiastic about spiritual life, about Krishna consciousness. And it's something that we have to maintain, right? It's not easy to maintain that mood, that utsaha, that urgency for Krishna consciousness.
So did you take your wife recently to Scotland with you?
Yes, it was
to meet the devotees and things and meet your friends.
Yes, yeah, it's all the mercy of my wife. She always wanted to go to Europe. That was like one of the dreams of her life. And so I said, well, let's do it, you know, why not? I mean, if I don't take advantage of her desire to go to Europe, I might not go on my own. And so I thought, okay, let's do it, you know? Let's do it. Let's go and make a trip. So we spent a whole week in the UK. It was fantastic. It was very nice to be back in Edinburgh, in Scotland, in Karuna Bhavan, and to see the devotees, and especially to manage to record a few interviews. I wish I had spent longer time, and I wish I had met you and many other devotees, but there's so many people in the UK, so many devotees in the UK.
I was just in Scotland only about 4 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. When were you in Scotland?
Like that was recently? Early May, first week of May.
I was there for a few days in July. I went up for a kirtan event.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shame for me because it was kind of like when I left. I mean, it's 20 years after I first arrived to Scotland, right?
Yeah.
2003, 2023. So when I left Scotland, it was kind of like a breakup of the yatra, you know. And now that I came back to Scotland, it was like another breakup of the yatra. So it was a bit strange to have that experience. But I mean, new devotees have arrived, you know, from Ukraine and from different countries. There's like luckily there's some new devotees, and like I've always told some of my friends, you know, my devotees friends from Karuna Bhavan, my love and my appreciation is equal for all of them, even if they themselves have conflict between themselves. My love and my appreciation is equal for them all. And I'm always going to be very grateful for their association. Like I told you, I feel I'm still part of their yatra, even though it's like split all over the UK. And now I try to be part in different sanghas from the UK, like Priyakun and Shamagori. They lead this program in Folkestone, and they have a reading group on Zoom on Thursdays that I try to attend. And I'll also try to be part of Ramananda Prabhu's Zoom program. And I'm also very lucky to have Javadvasis Association for the past few weeks. We've been getting together to read Shivaram Swami's books. We've been getting together to read Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani and Bhagavad Gita and just exchange realizations and perspectives. So, I mean, what more can I ask? You know,
it's just clicked that you are the devotee in Mexico. So when I saw Javadvasi in Scotland, as well as speaking to him, I saw him a month ago, and we were chatting, and he said, "Oh, Narada, I'm doing these online Zoom readings with a devotee in Mexico," and it's literally, I've just understood that it's you. That should have clicked a while ago. And he was telling me he was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning or something, or 2:30 in the morning to do the readings with you. That's commitment. I think that's what he said. I thought, wow, you're so committed.
Yeah,
I get up early. I get up early as well, by the way, but not that early.
Yeah, he's got an amazing sadhana, Javadvasi Prabhu. We really admire him.
He's like a soldier, isn't he, in Krishna consciousness? He's just on it all the time. Very determined.
Yeah, he's very, very intelligent as well, very philosophical. Although devotees have wonderful qualities, you know, like really, like I told you, I want to develop this. I want to think like the bee, and just to see the good qualities of devotees. That's one of the things that I want to work on, just to admire the devotees, the qualities of the devotees. There are really fantastic souls, if you actually look at them all, there's so much talent in the devotee community, and everyone has something to offer. And I like very much your approach that you're doing on your podcast about inclusive Vaishnavism. I liked very much what you said, how sometimes in life we felt excluded, and it's very, very painful of how it feels, to be excluded, different from being included. And I'm always very grateful. That's why I wanted to show this picture of Lord Ramachandra on the back, because that's one of the very nice pastimes that I was told by one of my favorites, one of my dearest god brothers. He was called back then Charudeshna Prabhu. He was later called Chaitanya Vallabha, and now he goes by his civil name, Charles Hopton. He lives in Torquay, not so far from where you are. And he was one of my dearest god brothers. And when I always struggle on Sankirtan, because Sankirtan in Scotland can be very, very tough. And I was always the lowest. I was always the one who collected the least, who distributed the least books. I was always the last. And you could very easily become depressed, but he told me the pastime of when they were building the bridge, Lord Ramachandra and Hanuman was making fun of a little spider, of a little squirrel, the different versions of the story, right? And he said, and Lord Ramachandra said, hey, wait a minute, that ant or that spider or that squirrel is giving me as much pleasure as you are, even though you can carry big boulders and this little spider can only carry grains of sand. Still, his service is just as valuable to me as yours. So who can be more inclusive than Lord Ramachandra? He gave chance to repentant demons like Vibhishan, and like he's so merciful. And so I like your mood. I want to tell you that I really like your mood of inclusive Vaishnavism. We have to be careful as well, because each institution, I think they have their own practices and they have their own, certain things that group them together, right? But generally speaking, I agree with you that we have to have respect, and that we have to see the broader picture, that we're all not just in Vaishnavism, but also like in the whole human society, or even the whole creation, right? With all living entities.
Well, thank you for your support and your kind words for the work we're trying to do here at the Hare Krishna Project to encourage and facilitate a more inclusive Gaudiya Vaishnava community. I think I decided to put my head above the water, or what's the expression? What expression could we use? Head above the parapet several years ago when I wanted to speak out more about things that weren't going so well and how could we make things much better for more devotees. And I've always been, even kind of outside of the Hare Krishna movement, I've always been a big advocate of inclusion and acceptance and equality. And I know they're kind of political buzzwords, but how can we implement that in the Krishna consciousness movement? Krishna exists in the hearts of all. Paramatma lives and exists in us all, not just sannyasis, as great as they are, not just temple presidents, not just those that have been in the Hare Krishna movement longer, but actually we're all spirit souls trying to live this life of bhakti, of devotional service. So we try and encourage an atmosphere or an environment of respect and tolerance and support as well. A lot of devotees now come to me on a regular-ish basis asking for advice and support on a wide range of issues. I even have Prabhupada's disciples coming to me now saying things like, I wish the Hare Krishna movement was more inclusive. I'm not happy about this. I don't like this. I don't like that. I can't do anything about it. I'm 35 years younger than you, but I could give you some advice on what you can do and who you can speak to. So, yeah, thank you for your kind words. And what I'm going to do with this podcast is put a link to your YouTube channel, so people can see some of the interviews, because you've recently, as you've just mentioned, in May this year, you interviewed quite a few devotees from the Scottish Yatra, or the maybe not in the Scottish Yatra anymore. And I've seen some of those interviews, and they're great. You're like a documentary maker. So I'm going to put a link to your channel. And a lot of people watching this podcast will know a lot of those devotees that you've interviewed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Narada Prabhu. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, like you also mentioned, I also have a passion for Krishna consciousness. And sharing Krishna consciousness is, like they said, it's an overflow of culture. It's an overflow of enthusiasm. So like you said, Krishna is in everyone's heart. And we have to remind people of that. We have to remind people that Krishna is their best friend. If Krishna has already made friendship with us, or we're trying to make friendship with Krishna, why not help others also to acknowledge their greatest friend? And what to speak amongst us as a community as well, right? We definitely have to be friendly with each other and be inclusive.
And hopefully others, or outsiders, I don't like that term, but outsiders, non-Hare Krishnas, will see how we treat each other with love and respect and acceptance, and they will see that they're part, that we are part of a community, and they want to join that community. You know, non-devotees will want to see how we live and want to be a part of that with love and respect and tolerance. Believe it or not, Atavi Krsna Prabhu, we've been chatting for about over an hour and a half. Believe it or not, it's been a wonderful conversation about music and the search for love. You see, I wrote it down: music and the search for love. And yeah, I wasn't aware that you were so involved with the Scottish community particularly back in the 90s when Balabhadra was there. What I was going to say on Balabhadra was that devotees I speak to about him give mixed reviews. So what I'm saying is it's not all bad. You expect them to say lots of bad stuff, and it's not. Actually, devotees also talk, like you, quite praisefully or positively. And when I was doing my research for my own book, I wrote a book about the movement in the UK. I did try and secure an interview with Balabhadra, but it didn't happen. But that door is still open. If any of Balabhadra's current disciples are listening, I have tried to make contact with them. I would love to interview either in person. I'm happy to go to Scotland, or on Zoom. I'm happy to have that interview with Balabhadra if he would like that. One devotee I was chatting to just recently in Scotland said, "Why don't you just go and knock on his door and ask for a chat?" But I've never met him before. Like, imagine if a random stranger turned up at your door. Oh, can I just talk to you about something? Are you free? It's not that type of thing, is it? I've never met Balabhadra before in my life, not in this life anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I heard, Saranga Thakur Prabhu, who's the one who recommended to do that, but I wouldn't recommend to do that.
I was actually in the city that Balabhadra now lives in just a few weeks ago.
Dunfermline, or where is it?
Dunfermline, I believe it's Dunfermline.
Yeah, some of the devotees that he's with are very, very nice. You know, I'm very fond memories of Mega Shyam Prabhu and Daru Brahman. They're very nice devotees as well. But it's a shame he left ISKCON, you know, like sometime after I left Scotland, I remember watching a video by Shivaram Swami, and where he stressed that we should not leave ISKCON, you know. Prabhupada, that was an instruction the Prabhupada gave: don't leave ISKCON. Even if there are problems in the society, you stay and try to rectify the situation, but don't leave ISKCON. And I was very, very, very touched as well when I saw that video. Shivaram Swami also recorded a video, even though he's part of the GBC and he was always against female Diksha gurus. Still, the GBC resolution was to approve it. And he made a video to explain why he was against it. And he gave his reasons why, you know. It's a fantastic video. He's supporting Shastra. He's giving, Shivaram Swami is very scholar, and he was like giving Shastra and taking from Prabhupada's conversations and lectures and letters and different things where Prabhupada, and also putting into context what Prabhupada has said and how Prabhupada would never approve of female Diksha gurus. And Shivaram Swami says, well, the GBC has approved it, and I have to explain what my position is on the issue. And I'm still part of ISKCON, even though I disagree with the GBC, and even though I still don't agree with the fact that they've approved it, but I'm still going to be part of ISKCON, and I'm still going to express my point of view and why I don't approve of that.
And I think that's healthy in an adult society. We should be adults. We should be mature. We're allowed, in my opinion, we're allowed to disagree with each other. And I think sometimes in lots of religious organizations, not just ISKCON, there's that kind of fear of disagreeing. And if someone disagrees, you think, oh, they're not one of us anymore. No, they're still one of us. They're just exercising their independence and their freedom of thought, which Krishna's given us.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's my kind of modern view, anyway.
Yeah. We're supposed to be independently thoughtful, right? That's what Chaudhary Prabhu used to say before he left. To be independently thoughtful. And one of the things about social media as well, I mean, it has its risks. I was going to tell you that sometimes, because now the social media is open for everyone, and if there's some controversies going on within ISKCON and the outsiders look into it, they might feel like disappointed, or they might not understand, Like once I tried to talk with Javad Prabhu about what was going on in Karuna Bhavan, and he said, it's just a family issue we're having. And that's what it is, right? We're all family. I mean, what happens if you have a disagreement with one of your brothers? You might like stop talking to him for a while, but you still love him, right? He's your brother. There's no need to like.
I don't know. Some families don't speak for 50 years, but I know this. I know what you're trying to say. I know the spirit of what you're trying to say. Yes, I agree. But some families never speak again. Exactly. The bust up was so big, but yes, I agree.
But at least some advantage of the social media, and after the pandemic, the world has changed so much that at least it allows us to choose the association that we want to be with. At least now with Zoom programs and reading groups and sanghas, it allows us at least to choose the right association, the association that inspires us and that helps us to advance in spiritual life and Krishna consciousness.
Well, before April 2020, I'd never heard of Zoom. I'd never heard of it. And someone said, oh, I'm a friend of mine who's not a devotee said, oh, we're organizing a quiz on Zoom. Do you want to join? I didn't join because I actually hate quizzes, but I'd never heard of Zoom. And now I'm using it all the time to produce this podcast well, sometimes 3 times a week now. I try not to use it anymore for social things, because if you want to socialize with people, it's nice to do it on purpose, but in person, not on purpose. But for work purposes, I use Zoom still. Yeah. Okay.
That's a wonderful invention.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say goodbye to the viewers and listeners at home. We've had a wonderful long chat. I know you were worried about what we're going to talk about. We've been talking for ages. Actually, you've been sharing your story for a long time, and that's been wonderful. I think you were worried about what we would talk about, but it's kind of gone really well. So I'm going to say goodbye to the viewers and listeners at home, and you and I can have a brief debrief after. But Atavi Krsna Prabhu, I really appreciate you being our guest on this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast.
Thank you so much, Narada. Thank you for the invitation. I wish I could have met you in person, and you're invited to come to Mexico. So
Mexico, I'll add it to the list. I've got lots of invitations to go to lots of places. I wish I didn't have to work, but I guess I choose to work. I wish I didn't work and I could just travel everywhere.
Like Narada Muni.
Yes, maybe like the real Narada Muni. So a big thank you to Atavi Krsna Prabhu for being our 77th guest. Unfortunately, he didn't make it to 76. He made it to 77 as the 77th guest on the Hare Krishna Project podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do put a positive comment, like it, and do click that all important subscribe button so you hear about future video updates. Video is such an old-fashioned word, isn't it? If you hear future updates and podcasts, and if you're watching this on the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page, please do put a positive comment, like, love, or care for it, and please do share the link with your friends and your family and other Facebook pages and groups that you're part of, because I would love for you all to help me share Atavi Krishna Prabhu's story. So until next time, we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Gauranga.